Engage in our Family Gaming Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Engage, a family gaming podcast. This is episode 119. Yes, we've made it this far, and I am your host, Stephen Dusman. As always, this is the official video game and board game podcast for EngagedFamilyGaming.com. EFG is a website where parents like myself and my co-hosts and sometimes guests come together to give parents and families the information they need to get their family game on. This week, I am joined by two people, my lovely wife, Jenna.
Hello, everybody.
And returning from episode 77, our very special guest, my BFF, the Dr. Rachel Kowert. How are you?
Hey, great to be back. It's been too long.
It has been too long. We've been talking about this for a while, but you went and did that whole having a kid thing. And
I did.
And you're busy because you're starting a company. And networking, and now you're this big Instagram chick now, so I don't even know what I'm doing. So all I know is every day I hop onto my Instagram and I'm given a little piece of inspiration. So thank you. You tell me to be mindful. She tells me she tells me to take care of myself, which obviously I don't. But
you should.
I probably should. It's top-notch stuff. But you're back because we're going to talk about some of the serious sides of gaming today a little bit. Totally blindsiding my wife. We're going to talk about the World Health Organization and its recent classification of internet gaming disorder and what that means. And whether or not parents should panic, which spoilers, you shouldn't. And that announcement came at the end of 2017. We've been trying to I've been wanting to cover this for a while, Rachel, and I've been trying to get my legs underneath me, trying to figure out how to best do it. And then I saw you tweet, and I was like, okay, that's how we're going to do this. So here's how we're going to talk about it. I have deliberately not told my wife any of this stuff, so we're going to get some hot mom takes, which is going to be awesome. And I suspect it's possible that the good doctor and I may disagree on some things, which is okay, because we still love each other. Serious heart hands. And we'll go from there. Does that sound good, ladies?
Sounds good to me. Sounds great.
Fair enough. So, before we go too far along, folks, I do want to thank you for listening. I hope the games you've been playing have been great. I'll tell you what, we've been playing some interesting stuff, and we'll talk about that in a moment when we go around the horn. I know many of you might have been wondering, where the hell was our board game podcast last week? Well, I'll tell you. Every time Jenna and I decided that we were going to sit down and record our board game podcast, one night, our boys literally decided to have a Nerf war in their bedroom. Another night, we couldn't get the little one to go to sleep. She was just being particularly needy, and she was being too loud to actually get it done. And one night I was watching Raw, and I'm sorry, but it was the Raw after the Royal Rumble. What are you going to do? Don't judge me, Doc. I watch professional wrestling when football season isn't happening.
I love it. I really do. It's great.
I don't want you to love it. I don't really want you to love it. I just want you to just respect my poor life choices. So, I apologize for that. We're going to try and be better, but we can't just ignore our children when they're having a Nerf war just to record a podcast. That would kind of defeat the purpose of what we are doing. So what did I do? I got involved in a Nerf war because that is called engagement. So, one thing that we do want to do, we want to make the show as interactive as possible, so please feel free to reach out to us on social media, shoot us an email, let us know. The gimme topics are draining because we're moving into the meat of the year, so we'd love to talk about what you want to talk about. So, this is Video Game Week. Very excited. So why don't we take a minute, let's go around the horn very briefly. Because we have a couple of games, one of which my wife is going to talk about. She's been playing the demo for Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology. People who listened to episode 77, and if you haven't, you should go back and listen. Doc, does that not sound like your game?
That sounds like exactly what I need in my life right now. I'm not going to lie.
It's worth noting it's a 3DS game. You can play that on the go.
Oh, excellent. Even better.
So, Jenna, you've been playing the demo because you actually defeated you actually completed a Legend of Zelda game on the 3DS, and so now you were looking for a little something different, and this popped up on the eShop this week. Tell us your experiences.
Okay, so it reminds me of something that I've played before, and I really can't think of what. Probably a Final Fantasy game, but you know me, I don't remember what games I play. Basically, you're in this world where there's the world is kind of being covered in sand, and it's taking over the entire world, and there's only a few fertile areas of land that are left, and you are a spy named Stock, who's given a mission during this war between these different countries. I think one is I can't remember the names of them. I'm really bad at that. Okay, but there's these two countries. He's a spy, and he's given a mission during the war to take two people that he's just met and meet somebody who has information about the armaments of the enemy, so he can, stop the enemy by getting information about their armaments. And so far, it's very like the cut scenes are all like super anime and over the top. And
if I may pause you for a moment, Doc, the opening cinematic is in fact basically an anime opening. Like intro of the characters, anime song in the background, all very dramatic. It's pretty weeby in the beginning. But everything you just described, Jen, Doc, it's quintessential JRPG. You got to go on an adventure with these two people you've never met and do this crazy stuff, and you get tied up in this whole quest. Yeah, it's JRPG.
And you start seeing visions. Yeah, you start seeing visions of the people that you're going on this adventure with dead. So you know that something bad's going to happen. You get warned as you're on your way out of the village. Oh my God, I have a bad feeling. This isn't going to go well. You're probably all going to die. Because the last couple times I've had this feeling, everybody's died. So be careful. And they send you out to buy supplies and go out on this mission. And you have this crazy little book that appears to be blank, called the White Chronicle with you. And I'm sure it does some cool stuff as you get along in the game. I have no idea. Fighting is neat. It's different than I'm used to with Final Fantasy, because your enemies appear on a grid that's 3x3. And the closer they are on the grid to you, the more damage they do to you. So you can use spells and skills to kind of push them away from you so that they do less damage to you and the people in your party. Now, granted, I've only encountered one enemy in the demo, so it's neat so far. It is, an older game that's been remade. So the graphics in the gameplay itself aren't terrific. But the overlay that they put on and all the new stuff that they kind of added to the game is very good looking. And that's it. I mean, it's different. It's nothing like, I know I've played something very similar to this before. I can't remember what it was, but it's a good game so far. And I'll probably buy the full version because, like I said, it's only the demo.
Yeah, I mean, so for everybody out listening, if you're a JRPG family, you're looking for something to do, you have a 3DS, and you haven't put it away for a Switch yet, which you probably will soon. This sounds like a good swan song. This is a remake of one of the better DS RPGs that is relatively hard to find, actually. And so this is more story content. You can actually play a mode that lets you basically play the first game, and then you can kind of new game plus into the new content, which is kind of interesting. I don't know. And it makes it up to you. You can either play it with the new content, because it's all about time travel. So it's kind of like Chrono Trigger in that way, only a little bit more extreme. It looks very cool. It looks like a JRPG on the 3DS. So it's coming out later on. I think it's in March. So it's going to be $40 for the 3DS.
February. Next week.
Wait,
February
really?
13th.
Really?
Yeah.
What's coming out in March that I'm thinking? I'm getting something wrong. It's fine. It comes out next week. Yeah, we're definitely buying this. Just from like literally I looked at her screen twice and I was like, nope, this is for us. We're doing it. So that is a Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology. Truth be told, I had it pre-ordered, but I canceled my pre-orders so that I could switch those monies over to the Nintendo Labo. Because, of course I did, because I'm a slave to Nintendo. You know this. So I want to talk about something now. Doc, how do you play mobile games? Like, you play games on your phone ever? Or is your phone
sometimes? My phone is filled with mobile games for my 3-year-old mostly, but
okay.
Sometimes.
Can I recommend one for you that I think is like in your wheelhouse? Because I have lost many hours in the last 2 days. to, and I'm going to read this one to you. Is that a dog?
That's
You have
my
a
dog.
dog?
Sorry. I have a dog. Sorry.
Oh my god, I didn't know you had a dog.
Hold on. Let me move the dog. I have a pug.
Oh my god, it's a pug.
Oh, you can see him. There he is.
Hey, dog. All right.
All right.
So let me lay this title on you. The name of the game is Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, because they can't just call it Final Fantasy Mobile. So here's what it is. Here's what my party right now, because this is a turn-based role-playing game. My party right now is the Warrior of Light from Final Fantasy 1, Saz from Final Fantasy 13, and Tifa.
What?
So basically, it is a mobile version of part of the story mode from the Dissidia fighting game. Essentially, basically, there's this world that has these two gods in it. One of them is a good god named Materia. That's a little on the nose. And then a bad guy, and then there's a bad guy, and basically they are both summoning, through shenanigans, heroes and villains from the various worlds and putting them together. And so so the good guys have to gather together to stop the bad guys. That's like the core of it. It is, so I think this is where the Square Enix has finally figured out how to make a Final Fantasy game with gacha mechanics, because it's got the gacha stuff where you're earning gems and buying essentially loot boxes. Let's put a pin in that. We're going to talk about that later, where you get equipment for the characters, but you get all the characters. I have Cloud, and I have Vivi, and I have all these guys. Yeah, I have all these dudes in my party, and I'm slowly getting more. I have Hope. Eventually, I'm sure I'll get Lightning and Squall and, all those guys. And you can use them. And in fact, there are certain quests that, like certain missions, that you get bonuses for using different characters in them. So and you can replay missions over and over again, level your guys up, and there's no energy, so you can just keep doing it. So you can actually play the game as much as you want, really. There's some things that are limited. And it's really kind of neat, right? Like the art style is kind of chibi, but not super chibi. We're not talking like Worlds of Final Fantasy level chibi. But it's interesting. Most notably, it is free. I have played through, I'm in the 3rd chapter of the story mode, and I have spent $0. And everyone that plays the game, I think by the end of February, gets a huge chunk of the virtual currency, the premium currency that you use to buy stuff, which is enough to spin the wheel and get 5 guaranteed 5-star items 6 times or something. And it's pretty generous with the stuff. So I recommend it. Jenna hasn't seen me play it. She knows that I have been playing it because it's when I've been sitting around just messing around on my phone. But it's a lot of fun. It is a big download. You probably need a newer phone to use it. But yeah, Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Nothing really bad for, from a content perspective. Kids may not know who these characters are. But if you're a Final Fantasy person or an RPG person and maybe you're just not in there and your kid wants to play it, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't let a kid play it. It's not like dark themes or anything. It's just a fantasy story. They might miss out on the, oh my goodness, that guy's in it. But this is an introduction to some of those characters, so when they play some of those games later, they'll be like, oh, I know that guy.
Exactly. It's how you teach your children about the glory that is Final Fantasy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And did you play Final Fantasy 13?
Yes.
Where do you come down on Saz? S-A-Z-H, for those listening. Did you like
Maybe
him,
I did not.
or did you not? He was the dude with the chocobo in his fro and the guns.
Oh, I did like that dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked that dude. Don't hate.
Oh, dude. Jenna will attest. She has heard me talk about this. Saz is my personal gangster. I love that man. First off,
good.
He drives a robot that transforms into a car. First off, and
right.
I love Transformers. So he drives a Frit who happens to turn into a roadster, which is rad. And he has a chocobo in his hair, and I respect gaming dads who take their stuff seriously, and he legit took that stuff seriously. So yeah, I'm down with that guy.
Yes.
So
Anybody who has a Chocobo friend,
you gotta like them, right, Jenna?
you gotta.
Right.
Right.
You know how I feel about that game. I mean, I like my Final Fantasy games to be more like Sword and Sorcery and less like, driving cars and cooking ramen soup. You know.
Listen, don't hate on the ramen. First off, that wasn't ramen soup. It was cup noodles.
Sorry, it was cup noodles.
Because it was
okay,
officially
you're right.
sponsored by Cup Noodles. We don't want to disrespect the marketing plan.
Yes.
It was officially sponsored by Cup Noodles. So anyway, that was a little bit of an aside. Sorry for those of you. I can't help it. I get my BFF here. We're going to talk about Final Fantasy. So
we're gonna.
So that is that's our mobile adventure for the week. I'm actually going to write a review of it. We don't typically review mobile games, but I'm really excited about this one, so I'm going to throw it up there. But I was sent a code by Playful Games this week for the Xbox One and Oculus Rift exclusive Super Lucky's Tale. Which is a 3D platformer that is very much a, they're trying to do the Mario formula, not quite as well, but it's pretty good. It's adorable because you play as a little fox in a t-shirt. And it's pretty good. I just started playing it this afternoon. I actually was taking a nap, and our 9-year-old decided that he was going to boot it up, and he played a bunch. And then he got very angry when I got past him, but what are you going to do? I'm older and have been playing platformers since well before he was alive. Anyone with an Xbox One and kids, this is a must play. Period. The end. Because if you own an Xbox One, especially if you don't have a Switch and you're not getting Mario Odyssey or any of that, there are very few explicitly kid-friendly games on the Xbox. So I would dive on this hard. And let me take a look for you on the good old Amazons.
It's absolutely adorable. It really is. He does. It reminds me of Donkey Kong Country. That's what it really reminds me of more than it does of the Mario games. But because you do collect letters as you go through, and the levels look very Donkey Kong. It's cool because you can tell it was designed for the Oculus Rift because it the levels switch between the front of the screen and the back of the screen, almost like it's like a 3D or 2D level, but it's neat. It looks like you could tell, like when you're watching a movie that was meant for 3D, you can see that this was meant for 3D, but it doesn't really take away from the way you play the game at all.
All right, folks. It's $16 on Amazon.
Absolutely.
This is outright theft that is legal. You do this. It's absolutely worth $16. I think it's even worth it if you own an Xbox One and you just like platformers. This is not like a strict children's game. I think this is absolutely a perfect option. If you're just looking for more 3D platformers, which there really haven't been that many. I mean, I know they brought some back. There was Yooka-Laylee that they put out last year that was kind of a disappointment. Mario Odyssey obviously is a big deal, but that's locked on the Switch. But you should buy one of those. But that's a different discussion. Super Lucky's Tale, $16, absolutely worth it. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. If you buy it using that link, you'll be supporting the show. So those are the games we've been playing. What do you think about that's a reasonable little suite there, Doc? You think? Those are some decent games.
if it's like Donkey Kong Country, I mean, I played so many hours of that game when I was younger. I'm not going to say what grade I was in when I was younger.
Yeah, you don't do that.
Yes, I would be. That sounds like a good one to me for sure.
So that's around the horn. Let's take a little break, very short, for a sponsor, and then we will come back, and then we're gonna get serious and talk about medical diagnoses and why that makes the good doctor angry. Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to Engage, a family gaming podcast. Our podcast this week is brought to you by Player One Coffee. Specifically, my personal favorite, the Leroy Jenkins brand of Player One Coffee. I can attest to this. It's an extra caffeine blend. It's about $15 a package, and it is worth every penny because, man, I had it given to me as a gift. They didn't send it to me. They didn't reach out to me. This is all on our own. It was sent to me, and I didn't even have to put sugar in it. And I normally have to make a milkshake in order to enjoy coffee. And this one, I barely had to do that, and it kept me awake. With that said, I don't want to have it after 6 o'clock at night because it is extra caffeinated. There are other flavors or brands. There's First Person Smoother, God's Gift to Gamers, or Overclocked Omen. I don't know what any of those mean. The Leroy Jenkins one was given to me, obviously, because I'm a World of Warcraft fan. So if you would like to try this coffee out, and if you'd like to support our show, please head on over to engagefamilygaming.com/coffee. That's COFFEE. Every time you buy it, you get a little bit of a break for our listeners, and also we get a little bit, helps keep the lights on. So thank you very much for listening. Let's get back to the show. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for remaining with us here at Engage, a Family Gaming Podcast. It is still episode 119. I am still your host, and I am still joined by two of my favorite people on earth, my lovely wife, Jenna, and my BFF, the Dr. Rachel Kowert. So we're going to get serious, as I promised before. To give the news, and then we'll talk about what it means. Late 2017, and officially announced by the World Health Organization in January of 2018, they announced that they were going to be including gaming disorder in their draft of the 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases. That would be ICD-11. In layman's terms, every so many years, the entire medical community comes together and comes up with a list of codes that are used to determine what's wrong with you when you go to a place for treatment. So you might remember seeing commercials within the last year or so where they will talk about like how they have a code for you got chased by a duck and stuff like that. Those are not jokes. That's actually a thing. That's part of ICD-10. And so as soon as it's like operating systems. As soon as Windows 10 comes out, Microsoft is already working on Windows 11 immediately, probably even before Windows 10 is out, right? Like they're always trying to iterate and improve. The reason they have these codes is for a couple of reasons. One of them is to drive research, right? Things that appear in these things tend to get research-ish. I'm putting a pin in that because as soon as I said that, the doc made a face.
Yeah, I did.
I said ish. Another reason is you have a code. There are a lot of places where you can't get treatment if it doesn't have a code. So that makes a difference because it's kind of adds legitimacy, quote unquote. I know you're making a face, Doc. Give me a break. So that's what these things are for. And also it makes it so that insurance companies in the United States, it makes it so insurance companies and doctors can talk. I know people don't like hearing about that, but it is part of my day job, so I talk about it. So that's what happened. As soon as that happened, there were some people who were very, very excited, and some people who were not. And then a lot of people who were caught in the middle because they had no idea what the heck it meant. Doc, why don't you share what it means? Can you strip your vehement your vehement rejection of it? Can you share what it means now, like for the research community, etc.? Do you know, or have opinion? I know you know.
So you're right in that it. Yeah, I mean, it does mean, like you said, that there will be more funding now, and a lot of people who support this decision, as you mentioned, I'm definitely on the other side of the fence, but we can talk about that in a minute.
Oh,
but,
I was hoping to.
A lot of people who support the decision, one of their main reasons that they support the decision so strongly is because now you will be able to acquire far more research funding in this area than you did previously without it being formally recognized.
Yeah. That is, I mean, it seems to me, just from the literature I read, it almost feels like that's what this was. It was like, we want to make this a thing, so we're going to make it a thing so we can research it. To me, it almost feels kind of like confirmation bias. It's like, we think it's a thing, so we're going to make it a thing so that we get more research to confirm what we suspect.
Well, see, I have to interject real quick because that's exactly the problem with it. Also, it's like, okay, that I understand that that's like the positive, but on the negative side, what you're doing by formally recognizing it is shifting the focus of the research, and rather it being exploratory, like, is this a thing and what does it look like? Now the research is becoming confirmatory. It is a thing now. So what does that look like? And that completely changes the approach of the research.
So I agree with you on that, for the record. Now, admittedly, this is two, professionals that work in research and also, like literally a doctor in the field, and also just a dude, but also I work in the health insurance field. I'm just a dude at the end of the day, but I work in the health insurance field, so I'm familiar with these codes, what they do, why they exist. But also I am someone who I think, and my wife will confirm, I may have exhibited some of these. I probably fit some of this definition. I think it may be worth doing some reading. So if you don't mind, I have what their definition is, and then we can talk about it. So the thing that I really hate about it is in the little PDF that they did, they started the definition with the last word on one page, and then they had a whole like indented italics remaining definition on the other page. So I thought like I misprinted it, and I was like, no, somebody just decided not to format it correctly. This is the English teacher in me, or not the English teacher in me, the editor.
To say
in me.
what? That's me.
That's you. This is the editor in me going, dude, you academics, come on, make it look good on screen. Anyway, you academics,
I know.
Always causing trouble. Here's what it says. And I quote from the World Health Organization. Gaming disorder, or games disorder, no, specifically it is gaming disorder is manifested by a persistent or recurrent gaming behavior characterized by an impaired control over gaming, increased priority given to gaming over other activities, to the extent that gaming takes precedence over other interests and daily activities, and continuation of gaming despite the occurrence of negative consequences. The behavior pattern is of sufficient severity to result in significant impairment in personal, family, social, educational, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. These features and the underlying pattern of gaming are normally evident over a period of at least 12 months in order for a diagnosis to be assigned, although the required duration may be shortened if all diagnostic requirements are met and symptoms are severe. That is their language. I just read it. It occurred to me 3/4 of the way through that I was super reading it in my cheerful voice, as opposed to like my stuffy British voice or something. So I certainly, those are serious things. Certainly don't want to make it sound happy. However, you have some problems with that. Well, before we have you talk about that, Jenna, what are your thoughts when you hear me read that?
Aside from anecdotal evidence and lots of stories that I have of you and children and other people that I know going through issues where game taken over their lives, I want to say that many disorders which are classified due to addictive behaviors, and I always felt that there's kind of been a gap that gaming was left out of it, because it does have inherent addictive behaviors, especially if you're a person, an adult, child, whatever, with some of these other diseases that go with gaming addiction, that gaming addiction kind of it comes more naturally to them. So like ADHD, kids who have ADHD have a tendency to hyper focus. Video games is one of the things that they hyper focus on, and when they have that issue, defied, and this. So I'm happy that it's included. That's why I'm happy that it's included, because I've seen it, and I've seen that kind of behavior manifest itself with who are very close to me. So I'm happy that I know that it makes a difference in the educational field to have or an ICD-9 recognized diagnosis that they can put, behavioral plan, an IEP, a PPT, things like that, for that to help children who have these issues in school, and how to, get over it, that they need a diagnosis. So this, to me, is big news, and it's good news. So I'm on the complete opposite end of this.
Okay.
I'm excited by it. And
Okay, so that is what I suspected would happen, and I'm very happy. I set this up beautifully. So, all right, so I can, if you want to know some of my personal experiences on some of this, you can go to engagefamilygaming.com. You can see an article that I wrote that was talking about me, and in it I say I am a recovering World of Warcraft addict. I put that very bluntly. It's on engagefamilygaming.com. Now, I should have put addict in quotes because that doesn't exist yet, and maybe never will, because this is a recommendation. It's not permanent. But I think that it's certainly something that is, it can't. I'm struggling with my own words. That's not the internet that is making me stumble. I feel strongly about this in a few ways. I know what happened to me at several times in my developing adulthood. And so something happened, and something that I think is medically relevant. Now, I think my concern with calling it like a gaming disorder is like, what the hell is it really different being addicted to games versus being addicted to gambling versus being addicted to something else? Like, does it need its own category, or can we just classify like addiction that's not like to illicit substances? Can we just all lump those together and just call it something else? Because I don't think games need to be like specifically attached on their own. I think that's part of my issue, is I just feel like games are being singled out a little bit unnecessarily when they could probably just be lumped in with something else. Because, I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Doc?
I'm taking notes. I have so many thoughts. Okay, so the first issue that you just mentioned, I'll start with that. The definition that the WHO gives that you read is very vague, and that's one of the main problems that scholars have about it, because like you mentioned, impaired control, increased priority, escalation despite negative consequences. Why there's nothing about that definition that is specific to video games. It could be golfing, right? There, you could insert anything in there. There's nothing specific about it.
True.
The APA, the American Psychiatric Association, they have put online gaming disorder in the back of their latest diagnostic manual as a condition that requires further research. People have issues with that as well, but at least I'm going to give them a little bit more credit, because at least it was specified with online gaming disorder. It was trying to at least differentiate. There may be something specific about gaming, and in this case, online gaming, that perhaps might be more addictive than other behavioral addictions. That said, in the DSM, which is what psychologists and psychiatrists use, currently the only behavioral addiction in there is gambling. So a lot of the scholars in the field have the same concerns as you and say, what is it about gaming? Why isn't sex addiction? Sex addiction's not in there. Workaholicism, work addiction isn't in there. Why aren't these quote unquote behavioral addictions, potential behavioral addictions, at a higher priority level than gaming? What is it about gaming? And nobody can really specifically answer that question, which is where a lot of the problems lie, with all the attention being given to it over the exclusion of other kinds of potential behavioral addictions.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I mean, I think another piece, like, is it possible, and Jenna, you can chime in at any time, is it possible that this is getting some of that extra attention just because it's just all part and parcel to the whole moral panic around video games being a new thing?
Right, and formalizing it as a disorder is going to do nothing except exacerbate the moral panic that we currently have about games, which 99.9% of it is unfounded in the research, the concerns where the moral panics are about games themselves. So, yeah.
And we've been over that. I mean, on this show ourselves, and in some of the conversations I've had with parents in person, we talk a lot about the and in your book actually, which I can't believe I didn't plug at the beginning of the show, but Parents Guide to Video Games. I still have it on my desk, and I reference it almost every week. It's right here. It's not. You know what I noticed? It's not signed. I'm gonna have to get that fixed.
Oh, I'll send you one. Yeah.
I'm collecting signed books now. That's like my new thing. I have a Stephen King signed The Stand.
Excellent.
That's like the pièce de résistance, as it were. But
still Mein Kampf.
Number 2 Well, I mean, he's Stephen King. Number 2 would be Dr. Rachel Kowert,
Okay.
Parents Guide to Video Games.
Okay.
So you talk a lot, and pretty much every book that I have read about kids and video games talks about the idea that the whole idea of violence and aggression and stuff like that, just there is no causal connection. There's just none.
Correct.
And it's been discussed over and over again, and they keep funding it, and they keep researching it, and they keep researching it and funding it because they don't want to research and fund other things, which is another topic that we probably shouldn't talk about on a gaming podcast, but feels like they just kind of throw video games under the bus. And it's part of this whole moral panic thing. And I agree. I think this just feels like this is part of the drill. It's like, all right, well, games are bad because kids are doing kid things, and so we got to make them go away. Or at least study them.
But I don't think...
Go ahead, Jenna.
Sorry, I mean, I'm interrupting because I don't think that any of the articles that I've read, based on them adding this to the ICD-9 codes, they're not saying that games are bad. They're not saying, in general, there a lot of people are saying games can help with mental issues. Games can help kids with their, learning and development and stuff like that. But there are certain addictive behaviors like gambling disorder, like substance abuse. I mean, there's so many other things that you can say, or like I said, I'm not a doctor, but there are many addictive behaviors that manifest themselves for kids who have these tendencies to become addicted to games. If not codes for other disorders due to addictive behaviors that are unspecified. So now they're just making gaming disorder a specified one. I mean, am I seeing that incorrectly? I mean, that is a code, isn't that?
Right. Well, I think that is what they're getting at. But the problem with pinpointing games over other things that perhaps have more research is that it has not in any way been convincingly demonstrated that problematic gaming is in itself of a problem and not rather a coping mechanism used for other underlying issues. So you mentioned ADHD, which we could talk about, or anxiety or depression. And that could be the underlying issue, and games are just the coping mechanism. There's been 40 years of game research, maybe not all about addiction, but there is thousands of study on gaming addiction. And if you look at the field of research as a whole, the research is just not convincing enough that it is distinct to have its own diagnosis, rather than like sex addiction, right? Which has a whole lot of research that is pretty set in its way, saying this is something specific that people can be uniquely addicted to or uniquely crave. Gambling addiction is the same way. But games, the research is muddled. It could just be working through depression or anxiety. I also played a lot of World of Warcraft. We can talk about addictive behaviors with World of Warcraft, or what I would maybe call like prolonged engagement. But it was feeding something underlying at the time. The game itself was not the addictive component. It was just a way to cope with other things that was going on. So I'm not saying that people can't be addicted. It's entirely possible that people can be addicted. It's just to jump to that conclusion at this point where the state of the research is saying, oh, I'm not sure, and the American Psychiatric Association is saying, oh, I'm not sure, and UNICEF also doesn't recognize it, and for the WHO to just be like, well, we should do it, and this is a thing, that's why the community is a bit like, is it? Should we really go there like now? Not convinced.
So my thought, and Jenna, just to kind of, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm dogpiling you. It's just there's only 3 of us. I should have gotten a 4th person. So my response to that, like, they're not saying it's bad. I don't think they are saying that it's bad. I don't think that the World Health Organization is out there explicitly being like video games are the devil. Like that's not anything that I have read. But this is what happens. So the World Health and I watched it hit when this announcement hit. I watched it hit Twitter. I watched it hit Facebook, and I am in a lot of, and being that I am both a parenting, like I'm in a lot of groups that are kind of a cross section of the universe. Like I'm in the Podcast Beyond Facebook group, which is an IGN Facebook group, right? Like that's just a bunch of dude bros and dude ladies talking about games, and they are about as pro game as you can get and not the most mature, right? Because they're, a lot of them are younger. And they saw those announcements, and outside of one dude who happens to be a practicing physician, like there were a lot of people that were just like lashing out at the decision. And then I am in parenting groups where people were like, legitimately, I knew it. My kid is never touching Minecraft again.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, they basically, someone shares the article and a bunch of soccer moms come in there. And I mean that like quite literally, because that's what it turned into. And a bunch of moms came in and were like, oh, well, I was wondering why my kid wanted to play 2 hours of Minecraft a day. Like, oh my goodness, whenever he's playing, he's so sucked in and, he must be addicted. And this is, I don't want him to, what if it's a gateway drug? And like, literally, I saw some of these things because the reality is not everyone on earth is as reasonable as the three of us. In fact, I would argue that the vast majority of the earth is not as reasonable as the three of us.
Well,
and
you know that I am.
Stuff.
You know that I'm not the parent who's always like,
not.
Video games. I'm not. But
thank God.
We have
because we'd have a different issue.
Right, but we have friends, and we have, I have people that my kids are close to whose parents are very like the opposite. They do think video games are a gateway drug and they're evil, and that they, anytime they're playing a video game, they automatically assume they're sucked in.
To illustrate this point, not to cut you off, but I just want to tell a funny story to the doc. One of my son's friends' parents, I had to convince them, or at least try to convince them, that Minecraft was not horrifically violent.
Oh my gosh!
Because it was the way the child was playing the game.
To be fair, he was locking villagers in a house and pouring lava on them. I understand, but it was not horrifically violent.
No, but the same child also took that playing the game and whatever ADD underlying issues there may be, took that game to be typical symptoms of somebody that is obsessed with it. Taking it to school, pretending to play Minecraft while they're in class when they're not actually, they don't have a device in front of them to do it. They're just moving their hands around. That is, that was a start of talking about it constantly, not being able to focus on anything else, writing school papers about Minecraft. Some of those things started to take over his life. So yeah, I mean, I get where her concern came from, and I get why, an educator or a parent or somebody would be in support of seeing this behavior. There's got to be a reason for the behavior. And like you said, there's probably an underlying issue that the child was trying to cope with that made Minecraft so enticing to him. But on the other hand, there's some kids who are they just get sucked into games. And yes, that's great. It's wonderful. That's what games are designed to do. But these kids who hyper focus on it, to tell another anecdotal story, we have another friend who had a adult age child, go from teen to adult, who became so obsessed with the games that the child was playing that their personal hygiene and their communication and their schoolwork, and they dropped out. They had a full scholarship to school. They dropped out of their first semester of college because they got so into their games. The child didn't shower, didn't bathe, instead of getting up, this is how extreme it got. Instead of getting up to use a restroom in the house, used a drain in the basement because it was much more convenient to do that and continue to play the game rather than have to stop the game, pause, lose any progress made, and use the bathroom. And I hate to tell this story
because what frustrates me about that is he was playing Hearthstone. You got a minute in between games. You can run.
We don't know that that's the game. I don't know what the game is. I didn't get that far into.
I play some mobile games.
I didn't want to. This is a good friend. I didn't want to push it.
I get it. Well, probably because she didn't know. I'm just saying, there is no mobile game that you can't play one-handed, bro. I'm just saying.
Yes, but that kind of behavior that kind of behavior is it happens frequently. It's not uncommon that kids who have whatever going on become this entranced in their games. I have another student in the school who comes in and can't form a complete sentence half the time without making a reference to Minecraft. It happens to be Minecraft. He's a high school age student, and it's his focus. I mean, he's walking down the hallway singing music to Minecraft, and I'm sure again there are probably some underlying issues there, but having this code there, having a diagnosis or an issue that a doctor is dealing with that they can put in to place to say, hey, this kid has these issues, maybe they need some help. That's why I like it. I like the code there because, like I said, it's something that you can have a diagnosis to put in a PPT or an IEP or, a 504, any of these things that these kids need some extra help in school. Now they have a reason, as opposed to your kid's just weird. We can't really give them special ed services, or we can't give them extra help. Your kid's just weird. This feels to me like it gives them something to put in there that will allow them to get services and help and stuff like that.
That's true. I mean, I don't think we completely disagree with each other. I agree that it's good that now there is a code, so like insurance and whatever.
Can we say that maybe it's bad, but not all bad things don't have good side effects? Like, at the end of the day, this may be of value to a certain subset of the population. That doesn't mean it's a great thing overall, right?
I don't know. I can't even agree with that, I don't think. Because I feel like that if what is being treated is gaming addiction, you are no longer treating the underlying problem. Like, maybe you are, and they're also looking at, okay, maybe someone has an anxiety disorder, they're depressed, or they're having social issues, or whatever it might be. But by labeling it, oh, they're addicted to gaming, that is putting the power of the addiction in the behavior of the playing of the games, and that's what's going to be treated, rather than I think that's the concern of the researchers anyway. Maybe that's not the case, and maybe they'll have a more holistic approach to.
That's fair, though. So they're going to try and limit their game time instead of figuring out what's causing their need to play the game.
Right.
And I think this is kind of a useful takeaway to the parents listening to this, because, I mean, the reason I wanted to talk about this, because, I mean, really, this is just some, like, you and I could have had a Skype chat, and I could have written an article, like this would, right. and we could have, and we could have been it would have been just as fun for me. However, but I think the real thing that I wanted to get out here, and this is like the point, is the idea that, and you use the term, and I love the term, and I see it in a lot of the kind of counterpoints to this, the idea of prolonged engagement. It was in your book, right? Like the idea that kid gets a new game. I mean, listen, when I get a new game, I knock that out. Right now, there is a subset of this population that is playing the crap out of Monster Hunter Worlds. It came out last Tuesday or something, maybe last Friday. I'm not sure. I think games come out on Fridays now. They're moving it around. But whatever. Came out, and it is a never-ending kind of 4-player MMO, basically. So, like, there's a lot of people that have probably put like 50, 60 hours into it since like last Friday. And some people might be like, wow, that's an inordinate amount of time for one thing. But it's, they're not going to do that forever. Because a lot of times you get really into a game and you're really enjoying it, and then it's over. Or then you run out of stuff to do and you're done. So that's prolonged engagement. And so I think a lot of parents see their kids get a new game. I mean, how many parents got their kids new games for Christmas? Or, Santa brought them new games, and they just went bananas during Christmas break, and we're having trouble adjusting back to school. Like, a lot of parents, that's when you start to see, oh man, he's so addicted to Legend of Zelda. I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's just really one of the best Nintendo games ever made ever. Like, literally freaking ever.
Stop rubbing it in. Still haven't played it. Oh gosh,
man. Well, you should come.
Killing me.
You should come visit.
I know. I know.
Next time you're in the frozen north.
I might be moving in that area. We can talk about that later.
Oh my goodness.
Well, at least the same time zone.
Time zone? Oh, you're going to go to Florida or something?
No.
Anyway.
No.
I don't know.
Not Florida.
Florida's Florida. Listen, I don't know. Anyway.
Definitely not Florida. Go on.
Hey, anyway, we will definitely talk about that. So, the invitation is always open. You're always welcome to come and play Legend of Zelda at my house.
Thank you.
I didn't tell my wife that I was going to invite you, but she knows. It's fine. Everything's cool.
We'll get along.
Yeah, you definitely will. And as long as you bring your baby, she'll hold your kid because she loves holding babies. Don't tell me I'm wrong, Jenna. You love holding babies.
You're not wrong. I love babies.
She does love babies. And so I think that's something to kind of take away from some of this discussion, is that calling something an addiction means something. Like the fact that we're having a whole podcast where 3 grown-ups are talking about whether or not the classification of gaming disorder should have happened. That means that it's not something that we can really throw around lightly. We talk about things being addictive, and we talk about being addicted to this, but like, words mean things. And in today's society, there's a lot of stuff where we've kind of abandoned the idea that words have meanings. But I think if there's ever one word that I think we kind of need to restore and kind of keep it its thing is addiction.
And
Go ahead.
Can I interject briefly?
Oh, of course you can.
Because you made a good point about prolonged engagement, because the other issue I have with the term addiction is that it is perhaps wrongly applying normal behavior for the vast majority of gamers as something abnormal. So a preoccupation, the example that your wife gave was obviously more towards the side of abnormal, about the child who was pretending to play Minecraft when he wasn't, writing essays about it. But, when I get a new game like Zelda, right? We're still talking about Zelda, and that is a preoccupation. Technically, we're talking about it. We're bringing it up in conversation. I made a couple YouTube videos last month, and in both of them, I referenced Green Day, who I'm obsessed with, obviously. And my husband was like, maybe don't reference Green Day in every video you make. So, I mean, if we say that being preoccupied with something is all of a sudden abnormal, okay, well then 90% of gamers who got a new game for Christmas are abnormal, right? So you have to try and see the line between what is actually normal and my child is actually fine versus taking it to the extreme. Because the extreme is very rare. I mean, people sure can have absolute problems and gaming can exacerbate them, but it's not going to be every single child on every corner.
Fair enough. And I will say, in your defense, Jenna absolutely knows all about being preoccupied with a musician.
I do. I absolutely do. I'm so excited about the Super Bowl, and not because of football. I have a problem.
I don't even know who's playing at the Super Bowl. Who is playing at the Super Bowl? Jenna?
It's Justin Timberlake, and I have a really bad problem. I love Justin Timberlake, and I really shouldn't, but I do.
Oh, that's not a problem, dear. That is not a problem.
I feel awful because I think he's so young, but then I realize that he's the same age as
almost
Steve.
my age.
Yeah, he's like, you guys are 2 months apart. So I'm like, oh God, I'm so old. I shouldn't like him. He's like a baby. And then I'm like, oh, well,
you're allowed to
like my husband.
He just looks much younger. He just looks much younger than me. Part of that's my fault. I get it. You're going to make fun of my beard.
It's the beard. It's got to go.
Go to hell, Jenna. Go to hell. Anyway, it does need to go to hell. It does need to go away. It probably will later. But anyway, that is notwithstanding. So, I totally lost my train of thought because I was making fun of my wife for loving Justin Timberlake. And it wasn't even making fun of it. He's my bro as well. I love that man. But I am very excited for the Super Bowl for vastly different reasons. And everybody listening to this podcast is coming out on Monday, the day after the Super Bowl. So I'll either be very happy or very sad. One of those two, because I'm a New England Patriots fan. Don't hate me. Are you going to hate me now? Did we finally find something?
No, I only watch college football. So
all right. Well, that's
if there's any consolation, my whole family, except for me, is a huge Cowboys fan. So,
nice.
Yeah, they're all
very miserable this year, is what they are. Very miserable, and I'm not miserable ever. So anyway, all football talk aside, because really I should not be talking junk right now because people listening to this could be laughing at me. So hopefully not. So anyway. Another interesting point that I wanted to bring up is, because the idea of what is it, what are they talking about, what are our thoughts on it? Another one is whether or not people should panic about it. And here is my take on this. ICD-10 was first approved by the World Health Organization in 1994 and was not implemented in the United States until 2015. And it had to be delayed through Congress like 3 times. So, we've got a while before this really finally finds its way in. Because changing coding systems is a massive, massive undertaking. One that will take a while. There will be debate, and who knows if this might fall out, or I don't know. There's a lot of option where things might change. And so I know I may have just, by saying that, may have just like totally invalidated in my listeners' minds why like we had this whole topic. But I still think that it is worth talking about because it is so easy and we so casually talk about, oh, he's addicted. And I agree with you. I didn't even think about the whole, like, the fact that it is absolutely normal. I still, anytime someone says the word Zelda, like literally anytime somebody says the word Zelda, and Jenna can confirm this, they bring up Zelda and I'm like, Breath of the Wild is the best Nintendo game ever made. Like, it's almost like a nervous tick. Like, you know, like, and and I barely play it, but I think about it a lot. You know, like and admittedly, I have a profession that kind of forces that, because games are kind of always at the front of my mind. But even before that, you know, I think it's something that would have stuck out. So it is normal for kids and for adults to play a game, engage with a game, and games aren't just games anymore. Games are cultural phenomenon. They're memes, they're YouTube videos, I mean, when you think about what Minecraft has turned into, right? Like, there are people who, like Dan TDM, Dan the Diamond Minecart, is he is a millionaire because he has entertained children with videos of himself playing Minecraft. Now, he does other stuff now, but, like, he is part of the cultural... Like, my youngest son wants to dye his hair blue because of this guy, right? That's not an addiction, right? Like, it's just video games are more than just pixels on a screen now. You know, think about Overwatch, right? Like, there are basically movies that come out every couple of months. Like, there are people who follow that game that don't play it. So... I think that for those of you listening, if your kid is really grooving on a game and they're watching YouTube videos and they're looking up memes and they're showing you animated GIFs of their favorite Pokemon characters and they're talking about Pokemon battles with their friends, that does not mean they are addicted to Pokemon. That means they are engaging with the media the way that it is designed. And if you still think it's bad, I want to know about all you Game of Thrones people and how often you talked about it, read spoilers.
Hey now, don't you be hating on Game of Thrones.
I hate on Game of Thrones constantly.
Oh,
I think it's hot.
He does.
I think it's
He
hot
does.
garbage.
And I stopped watching
Game
this
of
show.
Thrones.
I know, but I stopped watching the show after the first season because of cable issues. But I read the books, and you read like 30 pages of the first book and then just gave up on it because you have a thing. No, we have to be honest.
I will admit that I am very specifically predispositioned to not like it. I am sure that
he
it is
only likes
good.
books with heroes. He only likes stories with a hero. If it doesn't have a hero, he doesn't like it. So Game of Thrones is totally not him.
It is not for
me.
Especially
when you're in the first book and there really is no hero. So
Listen,
he gave up on it.
This is what happened when I read the book. I read the first book. You know how every chapter is a different character?
Yeah.
Every chapter, I would get to it and be like, crap, I got to read from this person again. And then halfway through the book, I was like, when was the last time I didn't say, I got to read from this person's perspective again? And I went, oh, the beginning of the book. And then I put it away. Here's the thing. I'm not making fun of Game of Thrones. Maybe I am a little. But I don't think that it's objectively bad. I say it when I say it's objectively bad to some people just because I'm trolling them. And frankly, haters like me are part of the culture.
It's true. And
and
you're
that's
right.
it. It's like
adults talk
about
Game of Thrones
and don't even
Outlander.
get me started on dudes playing fantasy football. Listen.
But, it's about fandom.
Right?
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, Game of Thrones has a fandom, and, like, we have Twitch, and we have, like you said, YouTube videos. It's all about having a fandom. So it's not like, you go to the arcade and you play Pac-Man and you go home and you don't talk about it anymore unless, you got the new high score. It's everywhere. It's in everything. It's in every outlet. It's all around us. And Game of Thrones is amazing. Throw that in there.
That's fine.
So, Steve, I have to ask you, since we are talking, and I'm going to go back to the topic, because Game of Thrones is not very family friendly.
Well, Game of Thrones was not necessarily the whole, like we were talking about. I was using that as an example.
I know, yes.
Now you really do need to come on Geeking with the Moms, which is another podcast I'm on. #shameless plug, because they talk about Game of Thrones all the time, and you could jam out with them, and then I could take a week off, because then you could just replace me. I'm sure they would be very happy.
Okay, but I do have a legit question though. For the American Association of Pediatrics, they have put in specific information about limiting screen time and how screen time affects behaviors and how digital media, specifically online media, affect children and behavioral issues and things like this. Is this that much of a stretch away from what the American Association of Pediatrics has done with screen time and digital media and stuff like that?
Okay, it's a whole nother conversation. Okay, so the American Association of Pediatrics does have limitation on screen time, but if you talk to a lot of people immersed in the research and the people who even made that decision, the limits that they put on screen time is relatively arbitrary, and it doesn't distinguish between what kind of screen time that they're doing. So it doesn't say that maybe 2 hours of Skype with grandma is any different or bad or better.
But
yeah.
they actually addressed that last fall.
Did they?
In their
Okay.
most recent update, in their recent update, they specifically addressed that one point, where
And
now context matters. So now it's less about how long and more about what they're doing. To the point where they even said, children under 2, it used to be verboten, right? It used to be you cannot put a screen in front of someone under the age of 2, and now they're saying, okay, that's cool as long as it's like mom reading an animated book, or Skyping with a caregiver, or something like that. They've adapted their guidelines to be more based on use cases, because it used to be screens were all treated the same. Whereas now it's like there is a huge difference between a kid like looking stuff up on Wikipedia or jamming out on YouTube watching Try Not to Laugh videos.
Right. So they've added that differentiation in there to say what is high quality media,
right?
What what can they consume? So but they had evidence based before they came up with these recommendations based on children's behavior from watching and behaviors in growth and development from watching too much generic screen time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the best advice in relation to anything that is trying to specify about screen time is everything in moderation. Like my daughter some days doesn't have any YouTube, and some days, I'm not gonna lie, she got 5 hours of YouTube, right? And her vocabulary is well developed, her behavior is fine. I think as long as media is not being used as a substitute for other things that are meant to be developmentally challenging, reading books and engaging with other people, I think that it's fine, personally, from what I've read and from what I know. And I think it is a big difference between that and jumping to gaming disorder, because gaming disorder is specifying one specific kind of media as being different from all of the others. And there's, again, I mean, games are engaging, sure, but movies are engaging too. And if we're going to talk about, fandoms, and if we use the WHO criteria, which again are very generic, maybe if they were more specific, I wouldn't have such an issue with it. But increased priority, talking about being preoccupied, I could talk about my favorite movie all day long. And there's just nothing specific about gaming that they have identified that makes it more addictive than any other kind of media that I've seen.
Outside of the fact, and I think this is what might be, is that a well-designed game is trying to do that. I think that's the only counterpoint.
Okay.
Is that truly good game design, like well-designed feedback loops and gaming loops, is trying to force your engagement. That's why
and reward you for
I mean, that's why matches in Splatoon are 3 minutes. So I think that contributes to it. I'm not saying that means that I agree with it. I'm just saying I think that can't help. Like, movies don't try. Like, I think movies is probably less of a good example, but how about shows that come out on Netflix and it's an entire season and people just binge the hell out of it, and like their life is destroyed for a weekend because they gotta watch Daredevil. Right. And so, but that's just for a weekend, but still, like, that's a big deal.
But is their life destroyed for a weekend, or did they just really enjoy their weekend?
I mean, that's a very good question. One that I ain't here to judge, because I'm just a video game blogger.
I mean, binge watching is another thing. Why is it called binge watching? Why isn't it just called I watched a whole lot of Peaky Blinders this weekend? I don't know.
I think there's a
why I brought a doctor
between...
on here? Shouldn't you just know?
I've been to lectures. No, I've actually been to lectures where they talk about the difference between binge watching and just really being into a show. And I think it's the same with gaming addiction. Where the line comes is prolonged negative consequences due to your activity specifically. But with gaming, again, I think that it's far more likely that it's related to something underlying than the media itself. Although, like you mentioned, it is a good point. Games are trying to suck you in.
I think
so to say.
I think that probably is more just why they might think it's different, because it's trying. Like a good game designer, I'm in a Slack channel with a guy who is a literal, like, he works for mobile game, like as a mobile game designer. I think mobile games are probably a little more.
Yes.
I think mobile games are a little bit more of like, and I mean the one real, like, of the things that we described, right? Like, we've talked about some examples, and I think people listening, they've probably been screaming at their car stereo listening to us talk this whole time, right? Because they know a guy, right? Like, everybody knows a kid. I think the vast majority of the stories that I know that have gone south have been because of mobile games. And one of the things is, it's not necessarily about time, it's about resources too, right? Like the people who have spent thousands of dollars as whales on some of these mobile games. And I'm not talking about kids hitting the button because they don't know that they're spending real money. Like, that's a different problem, but that's not an addiction problem. That's an Apple and Android marketplace stealing from people problem. And yeah, I said that. Shots fired. At me if you want. Right? Like, that's bad. And they've been slapped down, and that's getting fixed. But that's not most of the issues that I see are with people playing MMOs on their, or MMOs and MOBAs on their phone. And, losing, and because it's, you don't have a place. You don't have your computer. You don't have your game console. You could be playing this anywhere, and so you stay up all night because it's right there.
But when you talk about gaming, I agree that mobile games seem to have far more of a draw. We can talk about my husband; he plays those games a lot. But those aren't never the games, are they? That we talk about when we talk about gaming addiction. It's always the children and the consoles. It's never about the adults and the mobile games, is it?
Well, because it's always for the children.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? Like, it's always, but again, that's
because
why
people make the assumption that children can't be, children don't, they can't regulate, whereas adults should be able to. But on the other hand, no, if it's a truly addictive behavior, then adults and children are equally as susceptible to it, because none of them have the ability to regulate if it's an addictive behavior. Right. So I think that's why people focus on the children so much, because it's our job as parents to regulate them.
Right.
So they want.
What was that? Was it Clash Royale that I played for, like, it was like Clash of Clans, but it was like with cards and stuff. And man, I could not stop for like 3 weeks. And eventually I looked at my wife and I was like, I'm deleting this. I have to delete this, because I went like a week without publishing on my site. I was playing it at work.
I had a child who was sneaking his iPod to do the same game, sneaking it up to bed and playing until 3 a.m. His parents would take it away. He'd go downstairs at night and sneak it and play it. I mean,
and so I had to delete it. I was like, no, this game is so good. It was so good, but I had to put it away because I couldn't do it.
They got those feedback loops.
Man. Oh, man, they're so short, and it's always like, oh, that jerk, I'm going to come back and get a win to come back.
Yeah.
And I never did, because the thing that you don't know about me, Doc, is I'm really bad at games. Like, I'm real bad. Like, I am, man, am I
Unless
bad
it's a platformer.
I'm good at platformers.
You're pretty good at platformers.
Pretty okay.
That's about it.
I'm not good. I'm like aggressively okay. Like, good at platformers. I mean, that's GDQ. Like, those guys. Like, have you seen the speedrunning community? Have you ever seen?
No.
Okay, this is what we need to do. We need to hang out and watch some speedruns. I think we just need to hang out just in general.
Don't do it. Don't fall for it.
Jenna really hates it. So twice a year, they have this Games Done Quick marathon. It's 2 weeks long, and they raise a lot of money. It's a week long, rather, and they raise a lot of money, like $1 million a time, almost two, actually, for like Doctors Without Borders and
Doctors
cancer.
Without Borders, yeah.
Like, they raise a lot of money, and they have people who are like the best Mega Man player in the world come and sit down and play this in front of a live audience. And it's amazing. I will never be that good because I'm bad at video games. But I'm better than a 9-year-old at video games. I'm good enough to make my kids say, "Wow, Dad, how are you so good?"
Oh, that's good. That's good. That is a good benchmark.
Yeah, better than a
Whereas
9-year-old.
I am so awful that they make fun of me about every game that I play. Well, but I did beat 2 games this year for the first time in my entire life. So.
And I did give Evan, our oldest, has been talking a lot of junk. And he's been talking junk to me, and now my new thing is I look at him and I go, "You beat Final Fantasy IV yet?" And he's like, no. And I'm like, and then leave me alone. He's
That's
been nursing
hilarious.
that game since I think he started to read. Like, I think
Yes.
it's one of the first DS games we got him, and he keeps getting into it, getting to a point, getting stuck, and then he just refuses to grind. And it's a JRPG, bro. Like, come on.
There you go.
But
That's
anyway.
what you got to do.
So anyway,
Anyway.
so that's our thoughts. So here's what I'd like to do, folks. Excuse me. These are just our thoughts and opinions. We're not the be all end all. We are not the World Health Organization.
We're not.
And the world moves as it will, and we can't stop it. But we'd love to talk about it. So, what I would recommend that you do is you can come talk about it in our Facebook community, and that is engagefamilygaming.com/community. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, you can tweet at The Good Doctor, at Lena Caruso. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yes, it is.
Is that still your Twitter handle, or did you change it?
It is. No, that's still that's my Twitter.
Yeah, so if you have feelings, if any of the stuff that the Good Doctor said made you feel a certain kind of way, you can tweet at her. Just be nice. Be
Please.
nice. My audience is super nice, so you're not gonna have. It's not like you went on like Podcast Beyond and said video games are bad.
I mean,
You know,
I'm just one person with one opinion.
you're just one. You are an awesome person
Oh, thank you.
with an opinion, if I may say. So, folks, we're gonna wrap up our show today. Next week we're going to be back talking about board games. Specifically, I'm gearing up for New York Toy Fair, so I'm going to be talking about all the stuff I'm going to see there. And also, Jenna, how cool is this? Did you see King Domino has an expansion with giants in it?
I did. You showed me that. I still haven't played enough King Domino yet to really be excited about it, but I'm excited for you to be excited. I want to play that game again.
Yeah,
I am.
Okay, get hype, okay? Get hype. Also, I'm going to be specifically talking about some of the board game accounts on Instagram that you need to follow. That's what we're going to talk about next week. But until next time, I do want to thank you for listening to our episode 119. Can't believe we made it this far of Engage, a family gaming podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed recording it with two of my favorite people on earth. Until next time, you have a great week, and don't forget to get your family game on. We'll see you later, folks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Engage, a family gaming podcast.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next week.